Welcome to our series of online presentations brought to you by the Rowley Congregational Church in Rowley, Massachusetts. Today the title is Drinking of the One Spirit, which introduces us to the events at Pentecost, which the Christian Church identifies as that significant moment when the Holy Spirit infused the entire community. We hope these times of guidance and reflection will help you in your own personal journey, especially during the circumstances we're living in at the time of this global pandemic. If you would like to know more about the Rowley Congregational Church and how to assist in its mission, at the end of this video, there will be some information to help you do that. So thank you for visiting, and may blessings and joy open up in your journey of life in the Spirit. This is Reverend Tom Bentley, the pastor of the Rowley Congregational Church.
Bread I will provide till their hearts be satisfied.
So welcome and grace and peace to you. Today we're going to go on a bit of a journey to look back 2,000 years or so when an event happened in Jerusalem where there was a lot of confusion, a lot of consternation, and a lot of amazing things. It's called the Day of Pentecost. And Christians throughout the world identify this day as the moment when the church was born, if you will. The idea that the Holy Spirit became available to everybody. In the book of Acts, beginning in the 2nd chapter, we read these words. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place. And suddenly from heaven there came a sound, like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as on fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages, as the Spirit gave them ability. This story expands in the reading where we see people sort of buffeted around by this wind of power, and they're speaking to each other in languages actually of the region, and it's not their native language that they're speaking. It was one heck of a day at this harvest festival, which Pentecost is identified with today through study by the historians and the archaeologists. Artists have tried to capture this experience, replicate it in paintings and other mediums. If you look at those, you see there's a certain odd deficiency. How do you replicate a whole community of people being transformed by a spirit, by a wind? There's a odd stiffness to the medieval renditions, but it continues on into even more contemporary attempts at allowing us to imagine through visuals what this thing looked like. For myself, I find painting is an important way of delving into one's spiritual understanding, and it turns out that my more recent painting speaks to me in the same grounding of meaning as the Day of Pentecost. Yet it's abstract. It's speaking of fire and speaking of human forms somehow transformed. The word spirit is a word that has become a lot like love. It's so used and abused as to lose its power and meaning and clarity. What it does speak of, though, it seems to me when I listen with the contemporary ear, the modern mind, it's a word that evokes the idea of a private sense, a personal experience. The Christian community has adopted this understanding of spirit more and more. And well, it should, in a certain degree of discipline, because inside us, if you will, there is a spirituality. We have an identity, don't we? We have those powerful, evocative moments in our life that changed us. We feel our mortality as human beings, and as we wrestle with this mystery, we are often caught up in a realm of experiencing that is not easy to translate into words. That space is that place we visit at night in our dreams, where there was a flow of imagery and associations which cannot be ordered into reasonable description. It can't be replicated in some sort of reduced way to share with others. The experience is ineffable, is what people say. That's a word with its Latin roots is saying unable to be expressed. And isn't it that way with what we call spiritual? How can you share that with somebody? You can talk a bit about feelings, which are challenging enough. But the spiritual grounding that we have is who we are, is that area which, in a way, we barely understand and find, to be honest, somewhat threatening. The Christian experience allows for a deep participation in this very realm that we increasingly need to visit to be integrated human beings. The major disconnect happens in these moments of attempted sharing, I find, because the word spiritually or spiritual is hyper individualistic. That is not what it truly is in the full experience and extent provided through the divine. And it certainly is not what the Bible offers in reflection and guidance. Returning to our reading, we can see in the writing in the book of Acts that notice these collective community words. They were all together in one place. The entire house, all of them were filled, all of them. The Spirit descends on the group, the community, as well as on the individuals within it. The individuals who experience this first rush of the Spirit are, yes, the disciples, yet each is gifted to speak in other languages. Their experience becomes effable, if you will, expressible. It can be shared. And that is the real true power of what we call spiritual, the connective with other human beings in a moment of communion and union. And this gifting of the Spirit is what the drama is in Pentecost. It's first given to this community as a whole, and then as individuals connect to it, we walk with them in the writings of the Bible, and thereafter in the events of these last 2 millenniums. What we call spirituality is in truth dynamic. It's not static. It it must be applied in the outer context of our human species if it is to be fully experienced, even by the individual who bears that spiritual connective. Paul, writing in his letter, says that to each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. And Paul wants the Christians at Corinth to adopt a new way of looking at the spirituality by seeing these abilities as a means through which God is at work with grace and mercy in the whole community. It's in that dynamic which transforms what we can call talents into gifts of the Spirit. It is the beginning of a journey in this human arena to say, I'm spiritual but not religious. But when that journey stops there, then there is a breakdown. Because religion comes from a word religio, which is, again, this understanding of how human beings come together in common purpose and connective. If your spirituality doesn't have a place to go and be expressive with and for others, then it stops with you. It is a part of the experience, but the whole is when it manifests out in the world. We don't live our personalities in total isolation. We go out and, for better, for worse, we find as we struggle to be ourselves, we grow, we evolve, we change. So it is with our own spiritual identity. So it is with the divine purpose. Again, when we dig really deep into this spiritual realm, and that's very much, yes, in the beginning, an individual wrestling, the opportunity is there in faith to engage in the amazing moment when you can understand that there's a full being of love in the universe guiding you through this human connection. And as you reach out from that internal world into the confusing world of the neighbor and the other, that's when the process is refined and deepened and given new and amazing capacity. That's where we connect to love. Can we really love totally alone? No. We need to love another. We need to love others. And we need to be loved by others. We need to love our creation as we look around and see its miraculous gifts and sustaining powers, its fragility, its beauty. These are moments of love expressed in all sorts of connections, not just an internal one, though, but in an external and vital one where we go out to make a difference, motivated by a need to be alive in the spiritual connections that have happened inside us. We don't have to be grand leaders. The sea of love is available to each of us as a little droplet. Once we fall into it, we have all that is there. We don't need to find some magnitude of expression of love to verify its existence. Mother Teresa, who knew how to take the simple and the ordinary and make them come together in a powerful and transformative way, she said, not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. Tapping into that love is the spiritual moment when we can go out and replicate that love with others. When we drink of this sea, if you will, of love, it gives us strength to stand in the world and deal with those things that contradict our spiritual connective. It gives us the strength to stand against injustice and exploitation. It gives us the strength to embrace those things that we're called to do to make order in a confused world, to work with and help the weakest and most vulnerable among us. This is the Pentecost spirit that drives us back into the world to engage and serve it. One of the most important lessons we can take from the story of Pentecost is how this spiritual earthquake connected people in a radically inclusive way. This ripple moved through the ancient world as those excited about discovering and connecting to this Jesus and his loving guidance went out to connect to other human beings. And so we see in the writings of Paul a consistent inclusivity which breaks down boundaries and barriers that are dividing people at that time. And we need in this time to revisit that connect. Paul says in his letter to the Corinthians, "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all of the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit." I personally believe that the ability to drink of this one Spirit is available to everyone, and not just to card-carrying Christians who have to go through some rote formula to pass a test in order to access the love of God. Now, each of us as a human being, whether we like it or not, must struggle with this interiority of personhood and understand our own spirituality. And consequently, each of us has to wrestle with how we can carry that sense of self into the world and offer to others the love, the connection, the relationship which can be healing and helpful and transformative for ourselves, certainly, but for others. The beauty of the messy Christian church, with all of its variations, is that it includes, in the end, just about everybody, at least gathering a lump of human beings together. How we engage one another within the Christian community and the world is how I believe we find the maturity of our own spirituality. And never do I believe that this is purely a privatist thing to do, which makes us a member of a new elitist spiritual cult. Indeed, the trappings of ego are ripped away if one truly lives one's spirituality in the context of the confusing and messy community. If one truly goes out to take the risk of sharing one's love with another and others, despite the fact that they're often not nice people, that is a depth of possibility which moves one from being spiritual and now religious in one's devotion to the human family, to the earth, to the other. That inclusivity and generosity is available through the event of Pentecost, which is the birthday of the church in a lot of ways. And we're invited to return to the story so it can be the rebirth of our own spirituality, however we choose to live and walk within it, however we choose to express it, as ineffable as it remains. But if one wants to truly communicate with another, offering a loving act of support and kindness is an unambiguous way to live your spirituality and to live the love offered through your divine creator. So in the invitation of Jesus, I say, thank you for listening, and amen. So thank you for visiting with us. If you'd like to learn more about the ministry of the Raleigh Congregational Church, you can go online to firstchurchraleigh.org. And if you'd like to make a contribution at that point, you can do that online at the website. Also, you can send contributions to 175 Main Street, P.O. Box 364, Raleigh, Massachusetts 01969. Or you can call us at 978 948 3993. So, peace and best wishes.